Hi everyone, I'm Holly from Holly Scott Interior Design, and today I want to talk to you about how to style your shelves. If you're like me, I have been staring at this for a few weeks in lockdown thinking I really need to sort it out because it's looking a bit of a mess, it's a bit of a dumping ground, there's lots of things on there that shouldn't be, and it's been driving me mad. So I am going to clear it, and then I'm going to show you and give you some tips on how to put things together and group things in your on your shelves. Right, now they are mainly clear apart from a couple of really big objects. The next thing to do is to clean them. That's exhausting. Right, okay, so now we have pretty much a blank canvas and I have piles of stuff all here. So where to start? So I would think about what you want on your shelf, so what it's used for. Do you need to have books? Do you want to have certain artifacts? Do you want to have photos? And I think having open shelves in the home is a great way to kind of personalise the home and bring all your kind of artifacts which are collected, whether you've been travelling or handed down in the family, but it's a great way just to kind of add that individuality. So I'm going to have a play around with the main bits and work out where I want the books. Now books is probably best to keep lower down on the shelves because of their weight. Happy with where those main pieces are now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the books. And I'm going to start with that. Now I really like to colour code my books because I think it looks really fun. So they are already kind of coloured from before, but I'm going to have a play around with them. Okay, so with the books, you want to have them in kind of stacks or rows. And the best way to do that, I think, is by colour. So, and kind of size as well. So I'm starting here and I always bring the books to the front of the shelf so that they look neat. And I make sure that I have a book on the top that looks quite nice from the top. So I've got the bag book rather than the dream cars because I prefer it. Okay, and then I may well add an object onto there. In a bit, but I'm just going to play around with the books first and try and get them kind of how I want them. Okay, so I've started with a black stack coming upwards and then my white books, and what I do is I make sure that the books are right to the front of the shelves because obviously all the books are different sizes and it can look a bit messy if they're all pushed to the back and they're all at different levels. So that's one tip, is to make sure they're flush with the front of the shelf. So let me carry on with some more. I'm just going to pop that in there for now just to hold those books up. Now what we can do is we can add objects to be book stops, or artifacts. And we can have a play around with that in a minute to make sure we're happy. So this can come in with the reds. Okay, so we have the books done. If you have a look here, we've got the blacks. We've also got some blacks over here, some whites and reds, some yellows and blues, some greens. So they're kind of in blocks of colour. So next I am going to fill in the gaps with different artifacts. One, to hold them in place, but also to look good. So I kind of like to do groups of odd numbers. So a single item, a small group of 3, and playing around with the books that we've already got in place. Okay, so I've decided that I've got too many books here and I need to split them up a bit so I can break up this shelf. So if you look, I've got a couple of picture frames, I've got books and books. I just feel it's not particularly balanced, so I'm actually going to move this stack of books up to here. I'm going to move that along. So that it breaks up this a little bit. So I just went and found something from somewhere else. So this little glass, just to kind of balance again the glass. So I might put that on there. Actually, that's shorter, so that's going to be better on there. And then this one could potentially come up here somewhere. Maybe bring that into a group of 3. Together quite nicely. So I haven't put everything back on the shelves, but I did feel before it was a bit too cluttered. So there's a bit more space now. It's nice to have little areas of space between your groupings. So here's a grouping of books with a couple of artifacts. I've got some candles here. I'm not sure I'm 100% with that. Maybe too shiny here. And then we've got something going on down here, which is where the heavier things are, which aren't so in sight. So that's quite a good place for kind of more storage, is at the bottom of the shelves. So there we have it. So just to explain a little bit here, I wanted a couple of pictures on these shelves, but I don't just kind of do them separately and spread around because I think it can look a bit too bitty. So what I do is I tend to group them and then I just layer them slightly in front of each other just to add a little bit of depth. And then what we've done is we've got a stack of books, something a little bit different under here, and then we've got some books in the other direction down below. So I have just had a little change around, added a little pop of pink here. This is to tie in with some little bits of pink that I have around the rest of the room, and then opposite is the living room, which is kind of open, and that has pink blinds and pink cushions, so it's just kind of a little touch of pink to connect the rooms together and make it flow. And then let me just talk to you about the groupings I've done here. So up here I've got kind of groupings of glass, so I've got some bottles. These are some vintage little ice cream bowls that were handed down to me, but I really like the blue. And then what I've done is I've layered it with this blue canvas at the back. So here is just kind of a little blue grouping. So again, I've played around with odd numbers. So I actually have 5 items. I actually had to double check that. It actually has 5 items, but what I've done is I've done a cluster of 3 kind of with the glass, and then the canvas behind, and then I've actually just added another piece of glass this side just to kind of connect the 2 sides of the shelves together. And then if you see over here, I have just done another little grouping of 3. So again, I'm doing glass at the top, and I've just layered it with this star. And you want to just almost work in triangles, so play around with the depth. You don't want everything in a straight row. You need to play around with the depth and use the depth of your shelves just to create a little bit more interest. And then working down to here, this is an old sewing machine which I was given, and I love it. I just think it's really fun. I studied textiles at university, so it's very me. That's bringing, you know, a bit about me into the room. And then this was a picture given to my daughter for her christening, my eldest, and I don't know, we've always had it down here, so that works quite nicely. And then we've kind of added a stack of books to break it up at the end. So coming down, we've then got a few photo frames, some candlesticks, and then over this side, some more books with a couple of artifacts which were collected and just have memories to them. I think it's so important to you know, have things out in your home which have a meaning or remind you of an occasion. This Buddha actually reminds me of my 21st birthday, which was a Thai theme. I've travelled to Thailand a few times, so you know that has meaning. This was something that was gifted to me. So it's really nice to bring those objects and bring personality into your home, and having open shelves is a great way to do that. It's also great storage, but you want it to look attractive. So try and keep on top of it, try and keep it kind of in small groups, make sure there's space around everything, and now and then pull it all off and redo it, because if you are like me, you find that it becomes cluttered and everything kind of gets dumped on there. So make sure that doesn't happen and make it into a space that you really like. So here's the finished shelves. I hope you agree that it looks a lot less cluttered than it did before. I do now have some objects which need to go elsewhere in the house, but that's fine. I'm much happier with it. It just looks much cleaner. It's still got artifacts with meaning. It has some photographs which I wanted. It's still being used for storage for a few candlesticks, and adding a little pops of colour in there, especially the pink, which then ties through into the living room. So it's just something small for a pop of pink, but it means there's more flow to the different rooms within the house.